have a question. What is your favorite song and how do you connect with it? Is it when you fell in love or through something really difficult? I'm your host, Tiffany Mason. Now join me as I interview others and we take a walk down memory lane with them. Let's get lost in why that music matters to them. Turn up your radio and let's explore Memories with a Beat.
Hello, Podcast Land. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Memories with a Beat. And I have a treat for you guys. I've gone down under and I've discovered a talent that wants to share some songs with us about some anthems, anthems that she has developed or discovered for her clients, as well as an anthem that she has discovered for herself. I am so excited. Jenn, Turnham, welcome to Memories with a Beat.
Thank you so much for having me. I think it's such an amazing concept and I'm really pleased that you wanted to have me on. So thank you.
Yes, of course. Oh my gosh. I love when I pose the question, like, would anybody want to talk about music? And I love the real passionate ones that come back. And I know that yours was one of the passionate ones. So that was super exciting for me. And then even more exciting, you guys, I was stalking her on Facebook before her interview. And I see that she was a singer at one point. And so then that just gets me like even more like dorky envious because I'm like, oh my gosh, this person can sing, like she was in a band. This is so amazing. So I'm really excited to dig into your story, Jenn, and learn all about you. If you wouldn't mind, if you would share with my guests where you are and what you're doing right now or anything else that they would find interesting.
Cool. Thank you. So I'm dialing in, or whatever you call it, zooming in from Perth, Western Australia, as you say, down under. And I have lived here for most of my life. And at the moment, I'm focusing on helping highly sensitive extroverts. And I'll tell you a bit about them in a minute after my story. How I got to this point was I gave up my career in 2012. So I was the state manager of a leadership training company. So I had a pretty good career. But it kind of came about through family tragedy. I won't go into too much detail, but the short version of the story is we lost my mum quite young and we didn't know that it was due to a genetic abnormality until later on, about 7 years later. And then it was my auntie in Wales who discovered it. So then she contacted my dad. My brother and I had to go through genetic testing to see if we had it because there was a 50-50 chance because the assumption was that that's why mum died so young.
Oh,
and so through all that process, basically they found a golf ball sized tumour in my 32-year-old brother. So that was obviously...
praise Jesus, really?
Yeah, so it was a real big shock given that we'd already lost mum. And so it was pretty much assumed then that my brother had the genetic abnormality as well because basically the process takes a while. So they said, we're going to treat you both as though you've got it and do the initial screening because you're already well behind when we would normally be kind of really paying close attention to you because we were kind of 5 years behind where they would start monitoring us closely. So they basically just gave us both a colonoscopy, found this golf ball sized tumour in my brother. Obviously that led to a whole range of awful times that we had to go through, and I won't go into all the details because we've only got a limited amount of time. But needless to say, my brother's okay now. So it was 12 months of really awful stuff, and he's in remission. He also passed the 5-year mark, which they said was the real danger zone. So that's really exciting.
Woo!
Yep. And he's going to have to be closely monitored for the rest of his life because of this genetic abnormality. But at the moment, he's okay. And I don't have it, thank goodness. And so through all of that stuff, I was in my job that I said, the state manager of the leadership training company, and it kind of learning about my brother being sick got me to kind of reassess my life. And I'd had this dream inside of me that hadn't even necessarily shared with that many people at that point, but I had this dream that I wanted to be a singer. I didn't want to be world famous. I would just be quite happy to sing in a pub with a band, and that would be a dream come true. So given everything that had happened, I kind of thought, well, you know what? Like I've got this successful career, but I'm not loving my life. So I gave up the career. I didn't have a job to go to. I decided what had gotten in the way in the preceding years was always, in terms of me chasing my dream to sing, was always the job. So I thought if I get rid of that, I've got no excuse to make this dream come true. And so I ended up getting a part-time job just to pay the bills while I was doing the singing. And as you
Sure.
saw, I made that dream come true. And so it
Yeah.
was one of those times in my life which was probably the scariest yet the best decision I ever made, because just being up on stage and literally living my dream was some of the most amazing times of my life. So I highly recommend anybody give it a go. Don't let that dream die inside of you. So I was living my dream, loving my life, and then I got sick.
Oh, no.
So I came down with this mystery illness, which took 3 years to diagnose, because I had doctors telling me there was nothing wrong with me, even though there was something significantly wrong with me. Yeah, they actually made me doubt my own sanity. And it was about 3.5 years later that I got the diagnosis of ME, myalgic encephalomyelitis, which is commonly known as chronic fatigue. But I like saying ME because if I say chronic fatigue, people just think I'm tired all the time. And it's so much more than that. And it has a significantly detrimental impact on my life in terms of my ability to do things and work and socialize and things like that. So I had to stop singing.
Oh.
And then which was it wasn't as devastating as it might sound. Like, yes, it was, and it makes me sad that I can't do it now. But the way I look at it is, at least I did it. I made my dream come true.
Sure.
And I don't have any regrets.
Yes.
It was the best thing I ever did.
Yes.
So that's kind of, and maybe one day when I'm well, because I'm determined to get well, I can get back into the singing. We'll see. So that's,
Yeah.
And so then because I was sick and I couldn't sing, my part-time job, the only reason I didn't lose that is because I'd become friends with the owner. It was a physiotherapy business, and I'd become friends with her. So she was very kind of understanding and flexible with what I was able to do and not able to do. So I managed to keep that job, but it was only ever going to be a part-time job for me. There wasn't a big future in it. So I needed to find something more sustainable that I could do around my illness. So I thought, well, I've got a psychology degree, so maybe I can use that to help people. And so I decided to get into the coaching space. And I thought I had a niche at the time, but it really wasn't very narrow. Well, a couple of years after I'd gotten into the coaching space, I came across the research around highly sensitive people. And the reason I was thinking, why didn't they cover this in my university degree? But then when I looked at the research, it was basically all happening around the time I was finishing my degree. So it wasn't really a thing back when I was studying. So Dr. Elaine Aron is the lady behind most of the highly sensitive people research in the early days. And I came across it, and it was kind of like a light bulb moment for me. It was one of those moments in your life where you go, oh, now I understand everything that has happened to me, the way I've felt my whole life. It just, everything kind of fell into place and it made sense. And interestingly, what I found is that the majority of HSPs are introverts. So HSPs make up 15 to 20% of the population. So about 1 in 5 people are HSPs. And of those 15 to 20%, a whopping 70% of them are introverts. So to be a HSP extrovert is very unique. Now, it took me a little while to work out the maths on this, but basically 30% of 15 to 20% equates to about 6% of the population. Okay. So it's only about 1 in 20 people are HSP extroverts, and that's me. Like, I always knew I was an extrovert because I did study introversion and extroversion during my degree. So I knew I was an extrovert, and then the HSP was the missing piece of the puzzle, and it was just like this moment because it was, I finally understood myself. And what I learned is that the reason I'd always felt a little bit different, the reason I felt like I'd never really fit in life, was because I was a HSP extrovert, because I was truly unique. And so then I thought, well, there's my niche. I'm so passionate about helping these ladies. So I decided to help HSP extrovert women because I can relate to them. And they're also such an amazing bunch of women who have so many amazing gifts to offer the world that I thought there's my niche. So that's kind of how I landed in this space,
Very cool.
and it's been really amazing.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, what a great journey. Well, I have some questions for you based on your story. Okay, so did you quit your job in 2012, or when did you start your band?
So 2012, August 2012 is when I quit the job and went, I'm doing this. And then it took me till about, I think it was late 2013. So one of the first things I did was I was obviously doing a lot more practice and a lot more rehearsing. I went and also made a demo CD of just 2 songs.
Perfect.
And then I started looking for a guitarist originally. So I started off with acoustic duos, just me and a guitarist. So I got a few gigs. I first started getting gigs basically about 12 months after I gave up the career, and started working with this guitarist. Absolutely loved it. But my dad actually came to a gig once, and he said it was his idea to do the band, because he said, I think you're a performer. I think you need to be out there performing, because
like a true
seen
extrovert.
Yes, exactly. Because he'd seen me sitting on this chair, kind of like what I'm doing now, singing into a microphone. And then when the kind of a big ballad came on, like I used to do Adele, like then I'd stand up, and like he could tell that I was just busting to kind of get out and perform these songs. So then I looked for a band. Like I searched, I'd started obviously making contacts in the music industry. So there was this website that I looked on, and they were looking for a lead singer. So I showed up, and the rest is history. They chose me to be the lead singer, and then the band started. So, yeah.
Wow. Now, I'm curious, when you were like, your mom passed and you were like, life is short, I need to be living out my dream. What do you think was missing? Was it just a lack of purpose, or was it, I don't know, not being able to be creative in that space? I mean, are you able to put your finger on that?
I think looking back now, I can. So it was a couple of things. One, I think I was never destined to be an employee, because now I just can't imagine going back to working for somebody else. And then I think it was purpose, like you said. I kind of felt like I'm earning good money, but what am I really doing with my life? And I felt like because I was working all the time and then only had a weekend, I kind of didn't feel like I was living my life either. It just felt like I was, what do you say, living to work rather than working to live. So it just kind of was one of those moments where it took tragedy for me to actually go and really reassess and say, no, what am I actually doing with my life?
Did your band have any albums, or, what is the best part of performing for you?
We were doing covers. So we were performing other people's music in pubs. The best part of performing, that's a good question. Yeah, I think for me, it's that, because I think people who are creatives, the music is almost, it has this profound effect on you. So to be able to actually create it yourself, even though you're obviously replicating famous songs, but I got the chance to sing some of my favorite songs. So that music was actually flowing through me. And that was just like, I get goosebumps talking about it. Is just an amazing feeling to be able to create it for yourself, which is so different to just singing in your living room, obviously, because you've got the song playing in the background or whatever. Whereas to actually create that with a group of people is just a phenomenal feeling. And then to see, one of the other things I really loved was seeing people get up and dance. It just used to make my heart sing to see them dancing to the music that we were creating. The joy on their faces was just, so it was kind of like a two-pronged thing. Part of it was a selfish reason because I felt so good, but I did like to see the impact it had on other people as well.
So then at what point did you start coaching?
So that was in 2017 I did that. So I first got sick in 2015, early 2015. And then in 2017, that's when I thought coaching, because I've got a psychology degree. So to me, it was a kind of simple, I didn't have to study anything else. I could just start coaching.
Sure. So interesting to me. Okay. So tell me, what is an HSP? What is the definition? What box can you confine them in?
Okay. I hate putting people in boxes, but I also feel like it helps in this case, particularly HSPs, because a lot of them, they know that there's something different about them. So they grow up, a lot of them, thinking there's something wrong with them, like I did.
I feel very similar.
And you too, by the sounds of it. Yeah. So the box, I find in this case, helps because it actually kind of normalizes our experience. It goes, oh, there are other people out there like me. I'm not this freak that I perhaps thought I was for all these years. So HSP, the scientific name for it is sensory processing sensitivity. And there isn't anything wrong with you if you are a HSP. It is just something you are born with, and it's more like a personality trait. So I'm very clear on that because I think HSPs are amazing, and I don't want them to ever think that there's something wrong with them. So there's 4 criteria that Dr. Elaine Aron came up with to kind of work out whether you are a HSP or not, and it's the DOES criteria, which is DOES. Now, I can do a whole hour on this, so I won't. I'll give you a very brief definition. So D is depth of processing. So the simple way for that is overthinker. If you're an overthinker, you spend time in your head, and sometimes you struggle to get out of your head.
There was this
That's a good sign.
shirt that I saw on Facebook, and it says, "Hang on, let me overthink this."
Yep. And all HSPs will relate to that. So depth of processing. So our mind is very active, and the deep processing is also relevant because it's not just necessarily going over and over things, but it's linking things, and it's looking for meaning. So it's a pretty cool process if you can actually embrace it and learn to kind of pull yourself out of it when you're perhaps moving into rumination, which is a bit kind of unhelpful. So that's the D, the depth of processing. The O is overstimulation. So our nervous systems are more active than non-HSPs. So we become overstimulated much more easily. So crowds, noises, even just a long commute, like spending too long in the car or too long on a train. So we get overstimulated. Our nervous systems don't cope. And the E is empathy and emotional responsiveness and reactivity. So very, very high levels of empathy. So our mirror neurons, which are neurons that mirror what's happening for the other person, because there's a lot of brain science behind all of this. So they've shown that our mirror neurons, we've either got more of them or they're more active than non-HSPs. So we can very easily put ourselves in somebody else's shoes and empathize with their situation. And the emotional reactivity and responsiveness, if you imagine most people have ups and downs. So if their emotions are kind of going along on a graph, there's ups and downs. An HSP, that is just magnified. So our emotions are like much higher and much lower. So there's the highs are higher and the lows are lower too.
So I have struggled with this so much. God, I'm loving this. Yeah. Okay, so keep going. Yeah. What is the S?
And what you feel is totally normal because big emotions. So our emotions are big. And some people
My husband calls it passionate.
Yes, that's a very good description for it, and a positive description rather than bipolar, which some people think that they are. But no, we're not bipolar. We're passionate, and our emotions, we just feel them more than non-HSPs, and that's okay. And in fact, I think that is one of our beautiful traits. Because it allows us to care so much for others, for events that are happening in the world, for the planet. But it does require obviously some boundaries, otherwise we can kind of get sucked into the doom and gloom and all that sort of stuff. So it's completely normal. And I think once we embrace that this is just us, it actually feels a lot better. It's kind of like, well, this is just me. I don't like, because it used to freak my dad out. He'd be like, whoa, where's this coming from? I was like, Dad, this is me. I'm going to have big emotions. I know you struggle to cope, but just know that this is just me, and all you have to do is just give me a hug if I'm crying or whatever. Yeah.
Oh, mystery solved. This is giving me so much peace. It really is.
So the last is the S, and that's sensitive to subtleties.
Mm.
So we pick up on stuff that other people don't. So we're the ones who are going to notice if you changed your hair color, or if you had, you guys call them bangs cut. We call it a fringe. So if you've had a fringe cut, we'll notice.
This is my favorite part about interviewing people from other countries is what they call things or what they do. Oh, I love it. Okay. Sorry. So go on about the fringe. Yes.
So if you've had a fringe cut, we'll notice. If you've changed your hair color, even to the point of subtle changes in tone of voice, facial expression. So that's another real plus of HSPs. Are very good at reading people. So if something's up, we'll know because we'll have picked it up. So they're the 4 main criteria of whether you're a HSP or not.
Wow, that's incredible. My mind is being blown right now. Okay, so the song that you picked is supposed to be one that you're really embracing for your clients. So share the song and then share with me why this relates to your clients so specifically.
Okay, so the song is Heart by Imogen Brough, I think is how you say it, Brough. And the first time I heard it, like I knew I loved it. Mm-hmm. But the first time you hear a song, you know how you're not quite familiar with the lyrics. Right. But the more I listened to it, the more the lyrics started to really, I started thinking to myself, oh my gosh, this is describing HSPs. Aww. This could be our anthem. I got excited about it. So the lyrics that kind of really stick out to me in terms of describing HSPs is it's talking about the heart, of course. Mm-hmm. So HSPs are very heart-centered and driven by our hearts. And then it talks about like a seed in the wind. If you don't catch it, it'll blow away. Mm. But if you give it all it needs, it'll bloom. Mm-hmm. And I think that's HSPs as well. If you kind of nurture us mm-hmm. and respect us and our differences, then we'll bloom. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you're kind of berating us or not understanding our differences, then we're gone. Mm. We're just going to, and not necessarily physically go, because a lot of HSPs have an issue with boundaries and they stay, and because they look for the best in people and they get taken advantage of and things like that. So relating to that too.
I mean, people can let me down, and I will always want to root for the best in them. Like, they didn't mean to, they meant this, they meant that. I'm pretty good with relationship boundaries, but as far as just always believing the best in someone, I will stick it out for the long haul, just, trying to hang in there. Like, I know they're not going to let me down this time. They won't let me down this time. And just I always call myself a hopeless romantic, just in every aspect. Like, I just want to believe that good so bad,
Yep. And that's such a typical HSP thing. However, we need to learn to put those boundaries in place. We need to learn to stick up for ourselves so that we can live into the strength of that trait, that aspect of our trait, but not be walked all over and taken advantage of.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with that. I personally loved it. Just touched my heart when it said, your halo's not around your head, it's around your heart. And you talking about the song being very heart-centered, that spoke to me a whole bunch. And so how do you see that relating with your clients?
Yeah, so that is probably the line in the song that really, I think, captures HSPs. And the same with the bit about you're an angel lost in the light, mm-hmm. because I feel like that's what HSPs are. They're big-hearted people. They are the angels on this planet who are so caring and so giving, so compassionate, so empathetic that just captures it, a halo around your heart. Mm-hmm. To me, just that signifies a HSP.
And cool imagery.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, very cool imagery.
Yeah.
So, I think it just captures the essence of who a HSP is, to think about having a halo around their heart.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow. I completely agree. And I can see that too, just if your halo is around your heart, just that light coming out, like you just want to share, like you just want to reach out and help and love, and I don't know, like Care Bears, right? Like always comes out of their chests, right? That's what it makes me think of.
Brilliant.
We're Halo Care Bear.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think because a lot of people are drawn to HSPs, and I think it's for that reason, because they can subconsciously see the halo and that light radiating from their
Mm.
heart. It's also why narcissists are drawn to HSPs like a moth to the flame.
Mm-hmm.
So it is, I think, a really beautiful aspect of our trait, and that's essentially what my work is trying to get all HSPs, particularly the extroverts, to see that in themselves, because they don't necessarily, a lot of, particularly because as I mentioned earlier, a lot of them grow up thinking that there's something wrong with them. There's also a thing called vantage sensitivity, which means that HSPs are more damaged by a less than ideal childhood than non-HSP. So if you had a non-HSP and a HSP go through the exact same trauma, even if it's mini trauma, then the HSP would be more damaged. So a lot of them grow up damaged, traumatized, thinking that there's something wrong with them. But the flip side of that vantage sensitivity is they also respond much faster to positive interventions like coaching and therapy. So there's kind of, again, that double-edged
Ah.
sword. So a lot of, that's why my work is all about, you're beautiful humans, let's focus on that, while at the same time overcoming some of the challenges that come with being a HSP. And the challenges really are because we live in a world that doesn't understand us, because we're a little bit different. So it's not that there's anything particularly wrong with us. It's just that society isn't set up to accommodate HSP's nervous systems, HSP's deep processing. So that's why we kind of tend to have those struggles.
Ah, I guess it makes sense that if trauma is happening to you, you're more susceptible to it. But the other edge of that sword is that you're also more open and receptive to some kind of therapy or coaching. Those dots connect very easily in my mind. I know that you have this anthem for your clients and you have an anthem for yourself, so I don't want to run out of time. Is there anything more that you want to say about heart regarding to your clients or any work that you do with them? And then is this like a playlist, or is this anything that you do with your patients? Do you share this song with them? Do you tie it into your business at all?
So there's nothing else I want to say about the song. I think we've kind of covered that. In terms of,
Yeah.
I've posted this song in my group and said,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I think this should be our anthem.
Yeah.
Didn't get much of a response, but I'm not actually sure how many people saw it. So
Sure.
I probably need to post it again. But what I want to do is I want to actually kind of just bring it into the stuff I do, more as a kind of like an anthem, like we talked about. So be able to kind of use it to inspire and touch their hearts and start to get them to focus on the good in being a HSP. Yeah, I think it would be really cool.
Well, there's no reason you couldn't share your beautiful voice and create it yourself.
Well, that did give me an idea, yes, and we were chatting earlier. Maybe I should record a version of it. That would be cool.
Yeah, I love that. That would be cool. Just because you feel it so deeply for your clients and because you have a beautiful voice. So, kills two birds with one stone, I guess.
Hey, Podcast Land, I have another question for you. Would you like to learn, for free, how to get more downloads of your podcast? Social media is not our friend, and I want to show you how to repurpose your podcast episodes to virtually amplify your podcast presence by taking bite-sized pieces out of each episode and getting more exposure. I've created a workshop just for you, my fellow podcasters, titled The Down Low on Downloads. Go to virtuallyuva.com and get it for free. The link is in the show notes. Pause this episode, get it open in your browser, and tonight, when you're winding down from the day, you can check it out. Don't go another month wanting more downloads, but struggling to figure out how. This is how. And it's totally free. For now.
Now, what is an anthem that you've chosen for yourself? And I know we were speaking and you said that you had traveled for a bit of time. Where does that travel tie in? Is it after the band, then you traveled, then you did coaching? Put that timeline together for me.
Okay, so the travel happened last year.
Okay.
So I basically work and live on the road in our caravan. So we did
So
7
cool.
months last year. So he would leave me in a caravan park with the van. He'd go to work for 2 weeks and then he'd come back and we'd travel on to the next place.
Yes. Well, in my stocking, I did see you have this cool, what you're calling a caravan, a vehicle, and it has like a tent on top of it, right?
It's called a pop top. So it the roof you get in, so it's kind of like a half van, and you get in and you
Mm-hmm.
push the roof up. So that means that
Yeah.
when we're actually towing it, it's a little more compact.
Beautiful for bridges. Well, I love that on one of the pictures you had posted, two of my favorite places are my happy places, the beach and I think you called it a camper in the post. It doesn't really matter. But I was like, "Oh my God, how amazing would that be?" And I also, speaking of words that you would use in Australia that we don't use in America, is the bush. And so in that post, would you consider the bush, is that a forest? Or in my mind, if someone says they're going into the bush, that's like uninhibited, wild. You don't know what animals could come out at you, and maybe there's a tribe that lives in there, and they may like kidnap you and roast you over a fire. Like, what is the bush in Australia?
Bush. Okay, so the bush is, you're kind of close. It's the untouched
Okay.
natural landscape. And there's a lot of it because obviously Australia is a very big continent and a
Yeah.
lot of it is uninhabited. So some
Oh.
of the times we say go bush, it might be more desert like.
Okay.
But I suppose we kind of refer to the bush as anything kind of outside of suburbia and
Okay.
cities and things like that. So it's kind of like going outside the norm. But the true bush would be full of eucalyptus trees, and the only animals that might come and get you, that we do have wild boars, which you wouldn't want to run into.
Yep.
But it's not something that I've ever kind of thought, oh, there's going to be a wild boar come out of the
bush.
the bush there. Bush. You see kangaroos, emus, snakes is probably the main thing you have to worry about because we do have some deadly snakes. So there was
Yes.
one quite near our campsite, not last year on that trip, but on a previous trip.
Oh,
It was the
wow.
first time that I'd ever seen one kind of really quite close, and it was a little bit disconcerting.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so it is really the wilderness when we
Okay.
go bush.
Okay, so in your travels in the bush, in your pop top by the beach, with your cute, adorable, lovey little buddy, your little pooch, little chihuahua, what song did you end up coming up with that you're like, oh my gosh, this could be my anthem?
Well, I'm so excited about this song because just the first time I heard it, it just gave me goosebumps. So it's called Free, and it's by Rudimental featuring Emily Sandé on vocals. And the reason I love it so much is because she pretty much, the theme of the song is her trying to find her place in the world and her knowing or sensing that she doesn't really fit anywhere. But then she focuses on, well, maybe something's wrong with me is a recurring lyric through there. But she says, but well, at least I am free. So to me, that is just the epitome of everything HSP extrovert in particular, because the extroverts are much more kind of outgoing. We need external stimulation because we're an extrovert, whereas the introverts are much more insular and kind of homebodies. So I think HSP extroverts can really relate to this, and I think this is why I related to it, is because it is just that whole, I think the free part for me is focusing on living in our strengths and being unique, owning our uniqueness, standing proud in that uniqueness and saying, hey, this is me. Yes, I'm a bit weird, quirky, eccentric, and that's cool. In fact, that's one of the things I love most about myself. So that to me, that's where the free comes. But the theme of the song is essentially her finding her place in the world. And I think most HSP extroverts can relate to that, just that sense that we don't really fit. So yeah.
Well, I was going to ask you if you felt like that was the free piece, so that you took the words out of my mouth that I was going to say, do you think that you feel free because you're able to own it now? Like, you don't know where you are, you're still on the path, but you know what? I know who I am. And I think that once you can figure out your identity, I think that is freeing, or maybe it's like mentally freeing even, where you're not questioning yourself. You're not asking what's wrong. You're just like, okay, I am who I am. I am this loud, outgoing person, just like you said, quirky, eccentric, and you love me or you don't, but I own it and I like it, and that makes me feel free.
Yeah, that's definitely it. I think it's coming to that place of understanding and acceptance of all of those things that do make us different, and being okay with that. And it is freeing because we've spent so many years thinking that there's something wrong with us. So, yeah, to just have this world open up because we finally get to a place where we go, this is me, and that's okay.
Yeah. I think that's an amazing way to end this episode. I mean, you have shared so much information. You guys, I will have both of these songs, Free and Heart, in the playlist. So in Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Music, I'll put them on the playlist. So make sure you go check them out. They will be in the show notes as well. And then Jenn has given me some links to, if you are listening to this and you're having as many explosions in your brain as I am having, I would encourage you to reach out to Jenn. I know she has some free resources. She has a Facebook group. Get on it, join those, find other people like you, because that's one of the ways that you're easily able to own some of those aspects about yourself as well. You know, of course, be friends with Jenn and just see what she's up to and all the content that she's putting out there and how she's trying to help all of us crazy HSP extroverts. Now I know what I am. Jenn, thank you so much for taking time out of really your morning, which is my evening, which is so completely crazy. And what do you like to say?
Hi from the future.
Well, I really appreciate your time, Jenn, and thank you so much for being a guest on Memories of the Beat.
Thank you so much for having me. It was an absolute pleasure. I had an absolute blast chatting to you. Thank you.
Podcast land, I hope that this episode was music to your ears.
Well, that was fun, wasn't it? You never know what rabbit holes we'll get to go down and explore. Were you reminded of anything? Or anyone? Share what it was with me in a review. Honestly, the reviews don't do me any favors other than knowing people like you are listening to this podcast. Insert cheesy wink. However, the ratings do help, so leave me 5 stars. You know you wanna. This podcast was produced by Virtual You, supporting you in all things podcasting. To connect or check me out on social media, I mean, I know you're just gonna stalk me. But see the show notes, as always, for details. Can't wait to dive into my next guest's memories with a beat. Hit subscribe now. You don't want to miss the next episode.